one of his largest and most famous works for keyboard. It is surrounded by legend. The story of Count Kaiserling in Dresden is very famous. Count Kaiserling was suffering from insomnia, and Bach was supposed to have composed the Goldberg Variations for the Count to pass his sleepless nights, letting Goldberg, his harpsichordist, performing the work. However, this cannot be true, as Goldberg should be around 12 years old at the time that Bach wrote the work. The Goldberg Variations is the only Bach's work which was published during his lifetime. Around 1741 is the first original print. It is a very extended work. It is the longest keyboard, solo keyboard work composed during the whole 18th century. It is in the form of variations, which was a popular form of composing already in the Baroque era, especially in the region of Bach, composers like Buxtehude, Pachelbel, even Italian composers of the previous century, of the 17th century, such as Frescobaldi, had composed variation pieces. However, Bach's exceeds all of these works in length and in complexity. It can be compared to Beethoven's Diabelli Variations, which are 32. The Goldberg Variations are 30. The work is of extreme beauty. It's one of the most beautiful and difficult works of Johann Sebastian Bach for the keyboard. It is supposed to be played on a two-manual harpsichord like this one, as the composer himself asks for two keyboards in certain variations. He marks all the variations at the beginning for one clavier or for two. This is a German harpsichord of 1738. So it is very possible a very similar instrument like Bach would have used or Goldberg would have used at that time. So what could have happened with Bach and the Count Kaiserling is that when Bach visited the Count and the Count informed the cantor of his insomnia and asked him if he could send him a pleasant work so that he can pass his sleepless nights, Bach posted him the Goldberg Variations, which were already written and published. So, if the Goldberg Variations have to do anything with the Count Kaiserling, it would be more like this story than that Bach composed the work, especially for the Count. Now, the work has an aria for a theme. It is a piece in a saraband-like form. It is in 3, and it reminds us very much of a saraband. It has some elements that point out that the strong beat stresses towards the second beat, and that's a typical of a saraband. However, the performer here faces a dilemma. Should we stress out the rhythmical and accentual characteristics of the saraband, thus really pointing out the stress of the second beat, or following the very cantabile style of the melody? I opted in my recording for the second option, so to emphasize the melodious and cantabile character of this aria, of the opening of the Goldberg Variations. And I believe that the saraband-like characteristics are well within the musical context. For example, the often repeated notes of the first and second beat Or other elements that do that are ornamentation like trills and appoggiaturas, which very often fall on the second beat. The material that Bach mostly uses in this piece is the bass, the harmony. All the 30 variations are composed on the harmony of the aria. The piece is in G major, and occasionally there come some variations in G minor. Now Bach himself had told that he found variations composing boring. However, despite the fact that he hasn't composed that many variation pieces, the ones that he did compose, like the Goldberg Variations, the Passacaglia for organ, and the famous Chaconne for the violin, are pieces of very, very high artistic level. Variation number 1 is a two-voice piece in the form of a polonaise, and this calls for a not very fast tempo. And polonaise goes like this. It is a very lively and happy piece, very, very suitable for opening a set of 30 variations. It doesn't contain any significant difficulties for the keyboard player. However, there are some occasional crossing of the hands, something that Bach will use extensively in this set of variations, as whole variations are composed in this style, so in the crossing hands style, which is extremely uncomfortable for the player and makes the piece difficult. Variation number 2 is a two-part invention style piece with a bass, so actually it is a trio. It has some canonic elements, so one voice imitates the other, so we could say that it is composed in the invention style. So it is a two-part invention with a bass. It is a very pleasant piece, rather in contrast with the first variation, in the sense that it is more melodical. So variation number 3 is the first of a series of canons of the Goldberg Variations. Every third variation is a canon with ascending intervals. Variation number 3 is a canon in the unison. Variation number 6 is a canon in the second, in the interval of a second. Variation number 9 is a canon in the interval of a third, and so on. So the third variation is the first canon of this series. The two upper voices imitate each other, strictly imitate each other, that's a canon. And there is a bass which starts the first two bars as a normal Bach-like bass line, emphasizing the harmony, playing chord blips, but very soon at bar 3 it starts to have a perpetuous style motion of 16th notes, something which in combination to the two-part canon of the right hand makes the piece very complicated and very difficult to perform. This is not only an exercise of composition, but it is also a very great musical example of a canon, and also a great challenge for the performer. It is by far the most difficult of the canons of the Goldberg Variations.